Hello, everybody. I have a question for you. Do you listen to listen or do you listen to respond? Stay tuned, and we are going to talk to David, our guest, about that and a whole lot of other stuff. I think he's going to use me as a guinea pig. I'm not sure. We're about to find out. Thank you for being here. Did we meet on Alignable? Is that how we connected?
Yeah.
I feel like it was, and I don't remember. And we've just kind of touched base back and forth for quite a while now. And so at one point I thought, I need to have you on my podcast because you do something that I find very, very interesting. And so I'm going to kick it over to you, let you introduce yourself, let you tell our audience what you do, and then we'll just take it from there.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on here. What do I do that's very interesting? I'm confused.
So with your blind spot.
Oh,
And
okay.
and I was going to look it up when I was teaching interpersonal comm, and maybe you know this answer. There was a model that I taught, and I can't remember the name of the person who came up with it, but it was basically a window with 4 panes. And does this sound familiar to you? And so across the top and down, and I may have the order wrong, but the top left pane was things that you know about yourself and things that other people know about you. And then this is where I don't remember which way it went, but another one was things that you know about yourself, but other people don't know about you. And then down it was things that other people know about you, but you don't know about yourself. And then the final quadrant was things that you don't know about yourself and other people don't know about yourself. So when you told me that you kind of talked about blind spots and you help people out in that area, that immediately made me think of that model, because there is that one quadrant where other people can see things about us, but we don't see it about ourselves. And that quadrant can be a very uncomfortable quadrant to be in. And so that is why I found it fascinating, because it reminded me of one of the things that we talked about in my interpersonal comm class.
Yeah. Okay. So awesome. Yeah, what I do is, like you said, I would kind of be in that bottom right-hand quadrant where I'm under the impression that a lot of people walk around like this, and there's something there that they can't see. But once somebody points it out to you, then you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is I try to see how people see the world, like how the world occurs to them. And then I see if they can see things differently.
Yeah.
Because what's in your blind spot is not in my blind spot. I've got my own blind spots. But I like the phrase, you can't see a picture if you're in the frame.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And if you're in the picture, well, I'm looking at the picture and I'm not attached to being in the picture. And oftentimes the answers are right under our nose. We just can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
But once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Unsee it. Right.
Like, for example, let me see if I can find this. This is pretty cool. Have you ever seen this logo before?
Yes. And I think I know where you're going. I'm trying to remember. Yes. Yep.
So have you seen something in this logo you've never seen before?
The arrow.
Yeah, the arrow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it was always there.
Right.
But you might not have seen it.
Right. Yes. And I didn't see it until I had this conversation with somebody else years ago. And so I think it was like a marketing class or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but anyhow, yes, I was trying to remember what about it. But yes, now that you see that,
yeah, you can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I generally don't say a whole lot. I listen and try to be present.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask some questions. The person I'm speaking to comes up with their own answers.
Mm-hmm.
They implement their own answers.
Mm-hmm.
and then their lives change. It's magic.
Right, right. And that is what a coach is supposed to do, right? So many times people use the term coach in a whole different way. And I don't know if you consider yourself a coach, but coaches ask the right questions to draw out what needs to be drawn out. So sounds like you're pretty effective at what you do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
love
my kind of title I've kind of been given is the Blindspot Coach. So
this.
yeah, I'm not a there's a difference between, I think there's three C's. There's counseling, there's coaching, and there's consulting.
Yes.
All are very valuable, but all are very different.
Different. Yes.
A, a counselor or a therapist, same thing, predominantly is focused on what's happened in the past to get you to today.
Correct.
And a consultant comes in, says, hey, I've got a process or a system. Do this, do this, do this, and this is the result.
Right.
But what a coach does, or at least what I do, I can't speak for other coaches, is I get you out of your own way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because once you kind of clearly see what's right in front of you, it's like, oh, okay, that's what I need to go do. So,
Right.
yeah, that's what I do.
Right. And so yes, you are a coach in what should be the traditional sense. But I've noticed, and I used to do communication, conflict coaching, and so did the studying and took the courses and certificates and all of that. But I think now most of the time people just attach coach to what they do when it's not necessarily the traditional sense of what you do, which is effective. So, and I'm not saying what other people do is not effective, but
What they do is what they do.
what they do
But
is what
that ain't what I do. So,
exactly, exactly. And to work with a coach, I can say sometimes it's not comfortable because they kind of get you to challenge yourself almost. Okay, so speaking of that, you told me that you wanted to ask me a question. Is now the time? Do you want to ask me the question now, or do you want to talk about something else?
sure.
Okay.
And as a, let me go back to the last thing you just said.
Okay.
Yes, that is true about coaching, but if you ask the right question, the secret is you already know what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you let the fear of you, as in people in general, let the fear of judgment, criticism, success, failure, imposter syndrome, all that stuff get in the way of what needs to be done.
Right. Mm-hmm. I
So,
agree.
with all that being said,
Okay. I'm kind of nervous. Okay, let's go.
communication.
Communication.
Okay. So, here's the question for you.
Okay.
Who sends you the most text messages in a given day, week, month?
One of my daughters.
Okay, so for the sake of this argument, let's say it's the oldest daughter,
Okay.
whatever oldest daughter's name is. Okay, what if oldest daughter sent you a text message right now, knowing you can't answer it because we're in the middle of this podcast,
Right.
and it said, "We need to talk." What would you think?
My gut reaction would be, is everything okay? What's wrong? How can I help? That would
Yeah,
be my first thought.
yeah, of course, and that makes you a human being. That's what most people would think. And that's a way you show up automatic and predictable because you don't know what she's going to say. All it says is we need to talk.
Right.
She
Right.
might have said that she just got a promotion and she quadrupled her salary, or she hit the lottery, or she's having twins, or whatever. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But whenever you show up automatic and predictable, you're not really listening to what the person has to say because you're listening to respond, not listening to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So in that example, what if you simply took it as face value as, okay, eldest daughter needs to chat.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no point worrying about it because there's nothing to worry about. You don't know what she's going to tell you. But how many times do we when we have a meeting or we're going to have a close or whatever, and it's like, oh, I'm so nervous. What are they going to say? Well, they're going to say what they're going to say, and you're going to say what you're going to say. But how many times, especially like in a family situation, somebody walks in after a long day of work and somebody either wasn't at work that day or got home early or whatever, and the person at home all day who's maybe been doing the housework or taking care of the kids or cooking or mowing the grass or whatever, well, they've had a bad day and you have no idea. So whenever you walk in and the person you're speaking to starts screaming at you as soon as you walk in the door, now it's on you. Do you want to respond or do you want to react?
Right.
Because it's not that difficult to match someone's intensity
Yes.
or go above their intensity with the drop of a hat.
Yes. Yes.
But if you choose to respond, maybe you slow down, you take a little beat, you take a breath.
That's what I was going to say. Take a beat. Mm-hmm.
What's behind all this? Like, I just walked in the door. I don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
So just because someone's screaming or getting loud doesn't mean you have to.
Right. And that is a challenge. That's a big challenge.
Yes. And if your automatic and predictable response is when someone raises the intensity, you raise the intensity, well, once you become aware of that, you can choose to do something different.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if you've been that way from the moment you came out of the womb until today. It doesn't mean it has to be the same way in the next minute.
Right.
You can choose to do something different. I've heard it said like respond versus react. Think about we've all been to the doctor at some point, and they said, okay, you've got whatever you have. Take this medicine and come back in a week, and we'll see if it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go home and you start taking the medicine, well, if your body reacts to the medicine, that means it's whatever's in that medicine doesn't jive with your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this. It's like oil and water. It does not mix. Well, then you have to go back to the doctor to get something else, and then 9 times out of 10, it'll do what it's supposed to do, or 99 times out of 100. But if your body, on the same deal, if you go see the doctor and he gives you the medicine or she gives you the medicine, and your body responds to the medicine, that means it's accepting the medicine, and more often than not, it'll do what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same with our communication. If we're reacting to everything, we kind of become a victim of our life and not an owner of our life.
I like that. Mm-hmm.
So that's one way, respond versus react. You can always choose to respond. You can choose to react too, but respond is better because, once whatever you're saying comes out of your mouth, you can't take it back after that.
Yes. Yeah. You're hitting on so many things I talk to people about. So one of the things, I led a workshop one time on giving and receiving feedback. And we talked about how if somebody said, if you cannot get angry and raise your voice for the next X number of hours, I'll give you $1 million. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. You are going to control your temper because you want that $1 million. So you can control and respond versus react. So,
and I agree. And can you do it's not the real question.
are you willing to do it?
Yeah. Will you do it? That's the real question.
Right.
Because, it doesn't matter what anyone's saying, their level of intensity, it doesn't matter. You don't have to match it. And I read this in a book I was reading recently, and he said this. He said the book said anger is a tool. So like, for example, let's say you and one of your children is y'all are having a knockdown drag out. Not physically hitting each other, just verbally going at each other. All of a sudden the phone rings. Hello? And you realize it's your kid's school principal or the nurse. Oh, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. How are you today?
Right.
Well, you can switch it off just like that. And then as soon as the conversation's over, click. So what I was saying, and you're right back up to, going 100 miles an hour. But if you can just flip it off like that, like a light switch, then you can control it.
Right.
And, says sometimes I've had, this just came to me. Sometimes I've had stuff where I've walked in before and I'm like, what in the world's going on here? And I'm like, okay, this person's misinformed about what actually happened. Like they don't have the full story. And sometimes you just take it on the chin and you don't respond or react. You just, okay. And you go away and you cool your jets, and then the rest of the story comes out. And then it's like, yeah, my fault. Like I jumped the gun on that one. So, but then if you come in looking for a fight or an argument or a place of disagreement, we tend to find it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So I like that you talked about, though, you and I kind of talked a minute ago about take a beat, or you go away and you calm down, because I think a lot of times that separation is truly important. I have a friend who talks about stress, and she does an exercise that she calls stop, drop, and stroll. And it's a whole thing that I'm not going to go into now. That's her story. That's her process. But anyhow, it's kind of along those same lines as be intentional about removing yourself until you can kind of come back into the situation in a good place where you can make good choices. So
yeah. So I've heard it like this. Let's say, we've never met in person, but let's just say me and you were married. Okay. And one of us is upset and the other one is trying to not get upset, but it's teetering on that verge of this is about to be a fight.
Right. Yeah.
And I've heard it said, why don't you sit across from each other, knee to knee, and hold each other's hands?
Yes.
Because it's very difficult to scream at somebody if you're holding each other's hands.
Exactly.
Because it's like, okay, my hands are still attached to yours. I get you squeezing me, but it's not going to do any good because now you're hurting me. You're physically hurting me.
Right.
But easier said than done. But again, you always have a choice. Always.
Right. Yes.
Everything in life is a choice, and this is not up for debate.
Right.
Because it's a crude example, but it's the best I have that drives the point home. If somebody walks up and puts a gun to your head, you can choose the bullet if you want. You don't have to do whatever they say.
Right.
Now, will there be consequences? Yes. But that doesn't mean you don't have a choice in the matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Going back to your example of holding the hands and making eye contact, that's actually when I was doing conflict coaching with couples, that's one of the things I would have them do. Because when you're making eye contact with somebody, it's real hard to keep it ramped up. So.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, and we kind of talked about this briefly, was silent and listen have the same letters. They're just rearranged, but the same letters, exact same letters.
Right. Right.
And in my experience, it's been, if someone's really hot at me for whatever reason they're mad at, whether I'm aware of that why they're mad or why they're not aware, if we shut that hole under our nose and let them get out whatever they're going to get out
Mm-hmm.
without interruption,
Mm-hmm.
they won't go for a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the most, and they're going to run out of stuff to say. But if you interrupt, it resets the clock, and now it's another minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, because now they've came up for a breath, and they're like, okay, no, I got this and this and this and this and this and this.
Right.
And then I also heard it said, I heard Wayne Dyer say on one of his programs, The Power of Intention. Like earlier I said, if you go in looking for a fight, you're probably going to find one.
Mm-hmm.
He said there's 4 words that can end any argument before it starts. You're right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you have to do what they say, but yeah, you're right about that. Like the example he gave is, we had a family come. He's talking. Wayne Dyer's talking, and he says, we had family come over for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever, and we had the plates set out or whatever. And he said one of my family members said, well, this fork goes on this side of the plate, and this fork goes on this side of the plate. And he goes, yeah, you're right about that.
And then what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? It's like fight with somebody that don't want to fight, So
Right.
they're like, so are you gonna fix it? He goes, no, but you're still right about that.
I like that. Oh, I like that. That's great. That's good
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and I think the biggest thing for communication is, well, a couple of the biggest things is speaking in a language where they can hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, on the disc profile, you
Mm-hmm.
have DISC. D and C are task oriented. I and S are people oriented. Okay, and one's extrovert and one's introvert. But if you're a bottom right and you're a high S, you're very steady. You're not going to be a rock star, but you're not going to be bottom of the barrel. You'll just be very even keel. You know what you're going to get. But if you're going as an S to talk to a D, they don't care about the story. They just want the facts.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
but the flip side of that is if you're a high D and you're talking to an I or an S, you have to slow down so they hear you.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't run them over
Mm-hmm.
because they need and want the story that you don't want to tell.
Right.
So I
Right.
think it's, and like with spouse and family relationships, there's also like the 5 love languages.
Mm-hmm.
Physical touch, quality time, gifts, acts of service, and words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm physical touch, like off the charts physical touch. Like
Okay.
I'm gonna have my hands on you,
Right. Yeah.
and I hug everybody, and okay, whatever. But the point of that is, if you have someone who's physical touch and you keep buying them things, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to land as much as if you
Right.
come over and just touch them on the shoulder,
Give him a
because
hug. Yep.
that's,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, because that's how they receive it, not
Right.
how you receive it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's some quotation, I'm going to probably butcher it, but it's going to be pretty close, is basically the problem with communication is thinking it actually happened when it didn't.
Yes, I've heard that, and I cannot remember who said that. Yes. Yeah.
Well, people of the internet, whoever, this is not my quote, but that's
Right.
about whoever it is, that's what the quote says.
Right. 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 And I have to, from my background, I'm just going to say, and I don't agree with that statement, but that's a whole other podcast as to why I don't agree with that statement. But I don't want to chase that rabbit. But the love languages, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I talk about a lot is the love languages. And yeah, you can't, and I'll use me as an example. I am words of affirmation, like crazy words of affirmation. And my husband is acts of service. And so if I make him tea before he comes home, he feels loved, right? But he has a very hard time with building others up, because he'll say, well, that's not how I'm wired. But it is very hard, and you have to be very intentional on learning to speak the other person's love language. And I even say, let's take it beyond that, husband, wife. You got to think about that with your kids. You got to think about that with your parents. You got to think about that with your friends, with your coworkers, with everybody, because you need to be able to let them know that they are appreciated by you. And how are they going to feel appreciated? They're going to feel appreciated when you are speaking their love language.
Of
So
course.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, one thing you said, one of my words that when I hear my alarm bells go off.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. So you said it's hard to do whatever you said, to basically change what you your natural flow of things so other people can hear.
Yeah, that's what he is saying. Like
Right.
I'm
I
not going
get
to
that.
I'm not going to roast him, but he doesn't listen to this anyhow. So he'll say, "Well, I'm not wired that way." And I'm like, "But you can
Yeah.
learn. But you can
Right.
learn."
I 100% agree. And the word that I heard was hard.
Yes.
Okay. And is it actually hard, or is it uncomfortable or unfamiliar?
It's a yes. Yes. So, yeah, I like that. So, connotation, denotation, all that stuff, but yes, it is uncomfortable for him because it is unfamiliar for him
Right.
to build others up.
And neither one of those is hard.
Yeah, can I'm gonna have him call? Can I have him call you? Hey, you can call. But
Well, so let me go here.
yeah,
Climbing Mount Everest is hard.
yeah, I would
Okay.
imagine. I haven't tried it, but I would imagine.
Well, I mean, I haven't either, but I mean, people are dead on the mountain. So, like, it's hard. But oftentimes, whenever we say something is hard and it's not actually hard, we tend to avoid it.
Yes.
But it's not hard. It's uncomfortable or unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
But as Zig Ziglar said, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you learn how to do it well.
Well. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
for
Yeah.
example, I play
Right.
golf.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I picked up my first golf club when I was 16. Well, I'm better now than I was at 16
Right.
because I'd never played before. Of course, I couldn't be great.
Right.
But
Right.
in my world, it was worth going through the growing pains to become, more than proficient at the sport.
Right.
But so that was just I've got a whole other list of a few triggering words that whenever I hear it, alarm bells go off. But that was just one that I decided not to let pass by. So
No, I like it. I like those teachable moments for sure. And so yeah, I'm gonna use that though the next time I hear hard. I'm gonna say, is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
is it really hard?
Is it? I like
Like
that.
like for example, someone might say, um, selling my services is hard. Is it? Because when it comes down to it, On the most basic of levels, what are we doing right here, me and you right now? What are we doing?
Yeah, we're just talking.
Even more basic than that, we're opening our mouth and saying words to another human.
Mm,
Okay? So if someone says, it's hard to sell my services, it's hard for you to open your mouth and say words to another human being? Huh.
mm-hmm.
That's shocking, because, unless you're a mute and you physically can't speak, now that might be hard because you might have to write it out or draw it or whatever. But in 99.99% of cases, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
We just get in our own head and we let fear of anxiety, stress, judgment, what are they going to think about me or whatever. But
Right.
that's not hard. That's just uncomfortable or unfamiliar.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's one of the things that I talk about when I talk to people about getting on the stage and public speaking. It's some of the exact same things that you just talked about.
Well, so whenever somebody says that whenever I hear, oh, I'm afraid to speak up in public, I say, have you ever gone to a restaurant where there's a waiter? And they're like, yeah. I said, has anyone ever heard your order other than the waiter and the people at your tables ever once in your life? Yes. Okay, well, you were public speaking. You were just sitting down. You're speaking in
Yeah.
public,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so while we're here, here's another one of my triggering words.
Okay.
Just.
I say just all the time.
Okay.
All the time.
Okay, so perfect. So can you give me an example of when you would say just?
Oh, didn't I just say just?
You did. Can you give me a different example? Okay, like
I said it, but I know I said it because I say it all the time.
just go to the store and get the milk.
Right. Instead of go to the store and get the milk.
Or simply go to the store.
So why is just worse than simply?
Why do you think it's worse?
I don't know. I don't. But
Okay,
this
how I think of it is, let's say you're my boss and I'm the worker bee.
okay.
And the report's due Friday at 2:00. And I know it and you know it. Well, now it's Monday and the report's not on your desk. And you say, David, just go do the report.
Mm-hmm.
It could have the connotation like you're superior than me, and if you were doing it, you would already have this done.
Okay.
And it gives you the excuses, reasons, story, justifications why the report's not done. It kind of gives it a pass.
Okay.
But in the same scenario, it's now Monday at 2:00, and you say, David, how's the report? And you say, simply go do the report. You don't care about your reasons, my reasons, justifications. Simply go do the report. Whatever's done or has not been done in the past is not done, and we need that report. So simply go do it.
Interesting. It has a completely different feel.
Yeah. Yeah. You could replace simply with merely, but I like simply better. Like right. merely go do the report.
Right.
But I like simply better.
Simply. Mm-hmm.
I got another one.
Okay.
Anytime anyone says they have to. Well, you don't have to. We've already established this with the right. gun to your head example.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But you get to or you choose to. Because then it takes ownership of your life and you're not being a victim.
Yes.
Because as we established 10 or 15 minutes ago, you don't have to do anything.
Right.
And then here's my favorite one of all.
Okay, let's see it.
Have you ever heard or said the phrase, it is what it is?
I don't like that phrase.
I don't either.
I don't like that phrase. I don't like that phrase. I may have used it once or twice, but not as the
Yeah, yeah.
cliche phrase, like we talked about this podcast, and I said, I don't usually edit unless there's a technical issue. It's just going to be what it's going to be, I think is what
Yeah.
I said. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of along the lines of it is what it is, but I don't like the phrase it is. Why don't you like it?
Well, my coach pointed this out to me about 4 or 6 weeks ago, and
Okay.
I had an insight
Okay.
because I was like, oh, now I see things differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most times, 99 times out of 100, when someone says it is what it is like there's like a defeatist attitude about it. Like, it is what it is. My hands are tied. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't have any ownership in this deal.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you took off the second it and then said it? So say it with me.
Okay. You're going to make me think. Take
Okay.
off the second it. It is what is. Did I do it right? Did I do it
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is what is.
It is what is.
Hmm.
So now that that's what is, what do I want to do about it? Where you take
Okay.
ownership.
Yeah.
Because there's this Zen guy named Muji, whatever, Mooji.
Okay.
That's however you say that. That's what his name is. And he said, all suffering comes from wanting what is to be different.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
But when you take off that second it is what is. Like, for example, like this just came to me. One of your kids is AWOL,
Mm-hmm.
or he's off the rails, or he or she's off the rails, or they're not having communication with you, and you've done anything in your power to let them know that like you
Right.
care and you love them and whatever.
Right. Wow. Mm-hmm.
And you say, it is what it is. But then if the same scenario and you say, it is what is, well, all the worrying, anxiety, fear, doubt, none of that is going to change what's actually happening right now. But if you get into action, then you have a chance to do something differently. Like, for example, I had a lady I was talking to several months ago. She didn't have the best relationship with her adult children. Let's
Okay.
just say it like that. She didn't have the best relationship with them. Well, she ended up getting, she was divorced. She ended up getting, got re-engaged. And I said, congratulations, that's amazing. Have you let your kids know? Because she said she wanted a relationship with her kids more than anything. Okay, cool. I said, did you let them know? She goes, well, one of them won't talk to me. I said, okay, what about the other one? And she goes, well, the first one wouldn't talk to her. She lives somewhere out of state. I said, where does the other child live? She goes, right across town. I said, why don't you go knock on the door and talk to him? And she's like, well, I don't want to impede on their life. I said, well, it's been 3.5 years since you've spoken. No one accused that of being impeding.
Right.
And all you want to do is tell them that, hey, I got engaged. I just want you to know.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, there's not. It is what it is. I can't. I said, well, you can. You just don't want to.
Right. Yep.
And the conversation went downhill from there. But that's on her, not on me.
Yeah. And you kind of just hit what the reason I don't like it is what it is. Mine is a little different from yours. To me, it's a crutch. It's like it is what it is. Maybe we do see it from the same way. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to make a difference or change anything or whatever. Now, if it is something beyond your control, like two countries across the world fighting, yeah, you can't do anything about that. But, are you gonna? I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
I think most, if not all of us have a, what's the word? A misinterpretation of what's in our control and what's not in our control.
Hmm.
Like, for example, the only thing that you really can control is your attitude and your effort.
Hmm.
And if you have a skill, you could improve the skill or decline the skill.
Right. Yeah.
But other than that, and for the most part, in 99.99% of cases, you can control when you set your alarm to get up the next day.
Hmm.
But getting up is beyond your control because you
Right.
might not wake up,
Right.
which is beyond your control.
But if you do wake up, you can get up or hit the snooze, hit the snooze, hit the snooze.
Yes, and
I like the way you do the yes and instead of yes but.
well, because I
I
agree
like
with what you're
that. I
saying,
like that.
and as
Yeah.
as a the only time I say but, I'll go back to my snooze alarm story. The only time I say but recently, I've switched to and. The only time I say but is if somebody says something that's true, like um, God's good or whatever. The only time I say but is yes, but only always.
I think you texted me that one time. Yes, but
Yeah,
only always. Yeah, I think I said God is good or something like that.
yeah,
So,
whatever it was, But so the snooze button is interesting because part of the reason about communicating is, wouldn't you agree that it requires a level of self-confidence?
mm,
Not
mm,
like you have an ego,
mm,
but you're comfortable in your own skin and you keep the promises you make to yourself.
mm-hmm.
So the snooze button, what do you think? Are you a snooze button person?
Oh, I used to be a total snooze button person because I am a night owl, not a morning person. And
Okay.
so I used to like snooze, snooze, snooze. Now I wake up way before my alarm ever goes off. But if I happen to sleep in until my alarm, I do get up because I have too much to do to keep hitting snooze.
Yes. Okay. So perfect example. So on the snooze button, why did you continue to hit the snooze button?
Because I like sleep and I don't get enough sleep.
Okay. And was there some form of maybe you didn't want to get out of bed?
Yes, because I wanted to sleep
Yeah.
longer. Hmm.
So the snooze button in reality just lets you wake up more than once.
You don't get quality sleep after you hit snooze. I'm
And
just saying.
the 7 minutes ain't going to make it for you.
It's,
It's not going to do it for you. I promise
it's
you.
not.
But how often do we go through life and we're hitting the 7 minute snooze button? Well, now we say we don't have any time. You wasted an hour laying in your bed doing absolutely nothing for the last hour.
Right.
But you do control when you go to bed, because you control when you go to bed and when you set your intention to wake up.
Hmm.
But whether you wake up or not, it's beyond your control. It's above your
Right.
pay. It's above your pay grade.
And because you and I had this conversation, I don't know if you remember this back, and we've gone a long time back when we first met. You said something, and I said something about, well, I'm not sleeping, and you were like, well, why aren't you sleeping? Well, it's because the dog is barking, the kids are moving around, the this, the that. If I had my way, the dog wouldn't bark, all these things, and I would be able to sleep. But anyhow, so
Well,
but
that
but I want
that's probably a subject for a different different podcast.
maybe it is. So here's though what I think, and tell me what you think. And I know that you've got a meeting, and
Oh, I
so
got
let's not.
I got I got 35 minutes. We're good.
Okay, okay. So tell me what you think. When you hit the snooze button in bed, right? And I admit that I used to do that.
Yeah.
Is it easier to hit the snooze button, so to speak, throughout your day? Oh, I'll do this in a minute, snooze. Oh, I'll get to that in a minute, snooze. Oh, I'll get to that in a minute, snooze. Right? What do you think?
What do you think?
I think I think there are times when we can control. What is that book? Eat the Frog? I don't know if you've heard it or read it. I've only heard of it. I haven't read it, but it's basically do the thing that you don't want to do. Get it out of the way. So I think there are times when we can do that, hit the snooze, because we either maybe aren't sure how to do it or we just don't enjoy doing it. And so it's easy to hit that mental, oh, let me do this task first. Let me do this task first. Now, there are times when things come up. And
but
you
that's
have
the
to
exception, not the rule.
It is. It is. Where you have to hit snooze because child called, flat tire, I gotta go, kind of a thing, right? So that is what I think. I think it is an easy pattern to get into, whether it's in your bed or throughout your day with your tasks. So
I would agree, and I would add to it, if you're struggling with self-confidence, the best way to improve your self-confidence is keeping the promises you make to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if while you're fully conscious and alert and you set the alarm for the next day, whenever you hit the snooze button, that self-confidence goes down because you don't keep the promises you make to yourself.
It does. You are 100% correct. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you hit the snooze button or you don't hit the snooze button and you get up when the alarm goes off, your self-confidence takes a little tip. Hey, I keep the promises I make to myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and one thing I've hit the snooze button before. Anybody that says never hit the snooze button is a liar if they've never said they've hit the snooze button. But I got an old school alarm and I set it across the room. Well, that thing ain't going off until I get up.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well now I'm making a conscious choice. I've already taken 5 or 10 steps to turn it off, and then 5 or 10 steps back to the bed to go back into the bathroom. And it's like, am I going to lay back down, or am I going to keep the promises I make to myself?
Right.
Because if you begin to be a person who continually keeps the promises they make to themselves, that's what's known as integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be someone who doesn't keep their word. Because as Zig Ziglar said, if you don't keep your word and your word's no good, then you're no good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I used to play golf with a guy. Every single time, we'd say we're teeing off at 8:30. Well, he'd show up at 8:40.
Mm-hmm.
So we started, and he was aware that he was late. So what did we do after we addressed it a couple times? We started lying to him. So he'd show up on time.
Right.
We'd tell him it was 8:30 when we actually weren't teeing off till 9, knowing full well that he wasn't going to show up till 8:40 or 8:45.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm so late. Oh, it's okay. We lied to you because we knew you wouldn't show up on time.
Wow. And how was that received?
He continued to show up late.
Wow. Okay.
So that's on him. That's not on me.
Right. That's the choice. Yeah.
You know, but whenever you're known as someone who keeps their word,
mm-hmm.
you can be trusted. And then, like, another point about communication is that goes back to having agreements with people and not having expectations of people. Because when you have expectations, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
Because they're going to let you down, or you're going to let them down.
Mm-hmm.
Give it enough time.
Mm-hmm. Because we're human. We're
Of
human.
course we are. Of course. Now, if we have an agreement in place, like, hey, let's do this podcast on August the 6th at 1:30 or whenever we started, 1 o'clock or whatever. How's that sound? Oh, that sounds amazing. I'll be ready to go. So we're both here at 1 o'clock. But if, say, you were in Hawaii or in California and I'm in Central Time and you said 1 o'clock, I'm like, oh, she means 1 o'clock Central and you mean 1 o'clock Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both of us are not going to be very happy.
Right.
But agreements get people to have buy-in because it's crystal clear and there's no beating around the bush. You said, you want to be on the podcast? Oh, that'd be awesome. Here's my calendar or however we scheduled it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So now you know today at 1 o'clock and I know today at 1 o'clock we're having the podcast. We have an agreement. Mm-hmm. But if someone doesn't keep their word, because most of the time people want to keep their words. They don't want to be known as a liar or hypocrite or whatever. But if you have an agreement in place, like say you're a boss and you have an agreement in place with one of your workers, now if they don't keep up their end of the bargain, now we have a totally different discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Because what do we need to do for this agreement to work where you'll keep your word and do what you say you're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a totally different discussion than how come the report's not done. Because oftentimes, in that scenario and in other scenarios, we're actually addressing the smoke and not the fire.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take out the smoke and you don't take out the fire, well, the smoke's coming back.
Right.
But if you take out the fire and the smoke goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's how agreements are. You're addressing the fire and not the smoke.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, so man, we've had like an entire. I think the audience needs to understand. Like you've just given them a coaching session.
Yeah, that's why I'm a coach. That's what I do. I help people.
That's great. Okay, before we go, do you have any other communication tips that you want to talk about? Do you have anything, whatever else you want to add in? What do you want to add?
I would say the best or one of the best communication tips I could give you is be fully present where you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm talking to you right now, which I am, but in my mind I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, or what I'm going to do tomorrow morning, or the next day, or I wonder what my son's doing in the other room, or I wonder how much water I have left in my cup, or whatever, then I'm not being present with you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I
agree. If you be present, and presence, this isn't being present. Like put your phone down and make eye contact and be present with the conversation.
Yes.
And one more that just came to me. Ask interested questions, not interesting questions.
Oh, I like that. I've not heard it that way. Yeah, I like that.
Okay, and the quick distinction is an interesting question generally starts with I. I think X. What do you think? Okay, well, you already know what you think. You're trying to get what they think.
Mm-hmm.
But if you generally start with like an I think X and what do you think about that, what your opinion of it is may not get you to the right answer because they don't want to offend you or hurt your feelings or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're asking an interested question, like I'm interested in you and what you have to say, instead of saying, I think X, what do you think? You would just say, what do you think about X?
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll get the real answer.
Mm-hmm.
So Ask interested, not interesting questions, and be present.
Be fully present. I like that. And going back to the 5 love languages, quality time, that is huge to the quality time person. They want you to be fully present. So, yes, I 100% agree with that. Definitely. And I like that we talked a lot about listening. Before we started the podcast, I shared with you that listening is one of my favorite topics within the huge communication umbrella. So I really like that you went to a lot of the listening type things. So
Yeah, well, the good Lord designed us to have one mouth and two ears.
right,
So
right,
maybe we
right.
should maybe we should listen more than we should talk.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to put your information down in the description of the podcast. But if people want to work with you, do you have a company name? What's your website? How can they reach you on social? All the things.
All the things, yes. My company is it's it took a long time for me to come up with it. It's called David Creel Coaching. It's very difficult. And my website's davidcreel.com. I've got free assessments there. The Wheel of Life assessment being one of them about um, taking a whole life approach to
Yes.
your
Hmm.
success.
Right.
And I've got a podcast called Masterclass of One where I coach people live on the spot.
Wow.
And the point of the podcast is to put yourself in their shoes, like I'm asking you the questions.
Mm,
And it's called a Masterclass of One because it's the person I happen to be speaking to on the podcast.
right.
And my website's davidcreel.com, DAVIDCREEL, two E's, L.com. And if you can't get on that website and find out how to get a hold of me, I don't know what to tell you. I got my phone number, I got email, I got Facebook, I got every
Everything.
link that you can
Okay.
get me at. It's my picture, and then right below that is some icons, and you just
All the
press one of
stuff.
the icons, all the things.
Stuff. I like it. Okay. All right. Well, I so appreciate you coming on. I know that, like I said, we've been kind of communicating back and forth for a while now. So I'm glad I thought, hey, I need to have him on my podcast.
Yeah,
So thank you for taking the time. I know you've got a meeting, but I appreciate you.
yeah,
So
likewise. It was super fun, and
yeah,
if you want me to come back again at some point, I'll come back again. No problem.
yeah. We can do that. We can do that. All right, everybody. I am Traci Poe with the Communicate Great podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye. It is not clicking. See, this is where I'm going to have to edit because it's not taking stop.